Millennials are often described with stereotypes, entitled, anxious, tech-obsessed, overeducated, underpaid, idealistic, burned out. But behind those labels is a generation shaped by a very specific historical moment. Millennials, also called Generation Y or Gen Y, are the cohort after Generation X and before Generation Z. Most researchers place their birth years roughly from 1981 to 1996, though some definitions stretch the endpoint into the early 2000s. That means the oldest millennials became adults around the turn of the millennium, while the youngest were children when smartphones and social media began transforming everyday life. They are a bridge generation, old enough to remember a world before constant internet access, but young enough to have built adult identities inside the digital age. One reason millennials are so discussed is that their childhood sat at the edge of two eras. Many grew up with landline phones, VHS tapes, printed maps, and television schedules, then moved into email, search engines, instant messaging, and social networks as they reached adolescence or early adulthood. This made their relationship with technology different from both older and younger generations. Baby boomers and Gen Zers often had to adapt to digital tools later in life. Gen Z, by contrast, largely grew up with smartphones, apps, and algorithmic feeds as normal background conditions. Millennials experienced the transition itself. They learned to type in computer labs, waited for dial-up internet to connect, burned CDs, customized MySpace pages, and watched the web become central to school, work, friendship, and culture. This timing is why millennials are sometimes called the first globalized generation. The internet did not affect every country equally or at the same speed, but it created shared cultural channels that had never existed at such scale. Music, games, movies, fashion, and political ideas could travel across borders faster than before. A teenager in one country could discover the same pop stars, websites, forums, and viral jokes as someone thousands of miles away. Early online platforms like AOL Instant Messenger, LiveJournal, and MySpace were not just tools, they were social laboratories. Millennials experimented with screen names, status updates, online diaries, profile pictures, and public self-expression before the mature social media economy existed. They helped normalize the idea that identity could be performed, revised, and maintained online. The millennial youth culture of the late 1990s and 2000s was often described as upbeat, connected, and future-facing. Popular media promoted messages of self-expression, ambition, diversity, and personal passion. At the same time, education systems increasingly emphasized the need to prepare for a knowledge economy. Many millennials were told that the path to success was clear: get educated, learn technology, go to college if possible, build a resume, and enter a modern labor market full of opportunity. In developing countries, rising access to education and technology helped many young people participate in expanding economies. Computers, mobile phones, and internet access became linked not only to entertainment, but to national development, entrepreneurship, and social mobility. But the promises millennials grew up with collided with severe economic disruption. For many in the United States and other Western countries, early adulthood arrived during or just after the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009. This was not a minor downturn. It damaged housing markets, weakened job prospects, reduced wages, and made entry-level employment more competitive. For a generation told to invest in education, the timing was brutal. Many graduated into a weak labor market carrying student debt, only to find that degrees did not guarantee stable careers. Starting adult life during a recession can have long-lasting effects, because early wages, missed promotions, delayed savings, and interrupted career momentum can compound over decades. This is why some commentators have called millennials the unluckiest generation, especially in the United States and parts of the West. The phrase does not mean every millennial had the same experience, or that no earlier generation faced hardship. It points to the unusual sequence of shocks millennials encountered after entering the workforce. They faced the Great Recession, years of slow wage growth, rising housing costs, expanding student debt burdens, and then the COVID-19 recession, which disrupted work, childcare, health, and financial stability all over again. Compared with many previous cohorts, the average millennial experienced slower economic growth and more recessionary pressure in the crucial early and middle stages of working life. That changed how they approached money, security, and risk. Housing became one of the clearest symbols of millennial frustration. Earlier adulthood milestones, such as buying a home, getting married, and starting a family, became harder to reach on traditional timelines. In many cities, housing prices rose faster than wages, while rents consumed larger shares of income. Student loan payments and unstable work made it harder to save for down payments. Even millennials with steady jobs often found themselves competing in expensive urban labor markets where career opportunity and housing affordability moved in opposite directions. The result was not simply delayed homeownership, it was a broader feeling that the old social contract had weakened. Work hard, get educated, and settle down no longer seemed like a reliable formula. These economic pressures also shaped family formation. Across the globe, millennials and younger generations have postponed marriage, cohabitation, and parenthood compared with many predecessors. This is connected to culture, education, urbanization, gender roles, and personal values, but financial conditions matter deeply. Raising children became more expensive in many countries, especially where childcare, housing, healthcare, and education costs were high. Millennials were also born during a period of declining fertility rates around the world, and many continued the pattern by having fewer children than earlier generations. In developed countries, young adults in the 2010s were also less likely to have sex than previous cohorts at the same age, reflecting changes in dating, social life, technology, work stress, and expectations around relationships. At the same time, the global millennial story is not only a Western story. In developing countries, millennials and the generations after them represent a major share of global population growth. Many grew up during periods of expanding education, urban migration, mobile phone adoption, and integration into global markets. For some, technology opened access to new forms of work, learning, communication, and political participation. For others, inequality, unemployment, and unstable institutions limited the benefits. This creates a key point: millennials are not one uniform group. A millennial software worker in a major American city, a factory worker in Southeast Asia, a university graduate in Nigeria, and a young parent in rural Latin America may share a generational label, but their lived realities can be dramatically different. Millennials also changed the culture of work. They entered workplaces during the rise of email, laptops, remote collaboration, and always-on communication. Many were expected to be flexible, connected, and adaptable. They popularized conversations about meaningful work, work-life balance, mental health, burnout, and purpose. Critics sometimes framed this as entitlement, but it also reflected structural change. If stable employment, pensions, affordable housing, and predictable advancement were less available, then loyalty to traditional career paths became less automatic. Millennials were often asked to treat work as a passion while navigating insecure contracts, side hustles, wage stagnation, or high costs of living. Their work values emerged from both idealism and necessity. Religion and identity also shifted. In many Western countries, millennials are less likely than older generations to identify with traditional religious institutions. This does not mean they are uniformly secular or uninterested in meaning. Many describe themselves as spiritual, open to personal belief systems, or drawn to ethics, wellness, meditation, social justice, or community outside formal religion. This pattern reflects broader social changes, higher education levels, cultural pluralism, distrust of institutions, changing family structures, and online exposure to many worldviews. Just as millennials customized online profiles, music libraries, and career paths, many also approached belief and identity in more individualized ways. So who are millennials, really? They are the generation that grew up during the internet's rise, came of age under globalization, and entered adulthood during repeated economic shocks. They were taught to prepare for a future powered by education and technology, then discovered that the future was more expensive, unstable, and unequal than advertised. They helped build online culture, reshaped expectations around work and identity, delayed traditional milestones, and carried the pressures of student debt, housing costs, childcare expenses, and recessionary instability. Understanding millennials means looking past the clichés. They are not just avocado toast, nostalgia, or social media habits. They are a case study in what happens when rapid technological optimism meets economic uncertainty, and when an entire generation is asked to adapt faster than the world around them can provide stability. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.